At long last, I have returned. Hi everyone, this is Beverly signing on to welcome you all to another video and to welcome you all back. During the time that I was gone, I did go into eShop a lot and save games and look for sales and things like that because I was getting pretty burnt out from Animal Crossing and Minecraft. So I decided to find some new games, and this is one of my favorite discoveries that I found on sale. This game is called Dicey Dungeons, and I wanted to go ahead and play the vanilla version. There are two other versions that I've played a little bit, but I figured just to start off we should start with the original and start with the first level, the warrior dice. So each dice has their own characteristics and special abilities. The warrior dice has a special card that allows you to re-roll any dice, and he also has a special ability called Fury, and he allows you to attack twice, so repeat your action that you do. And the way that that works is that the more damage that you take, the quicker your bar fills up. As you can see in the bottom left, there's a little yellow bar that's filling up with every time that I get hit. And it's just really great, that game mechanic where you have a special ability where you get to re-roll your dice for this character and the ability to progress even if you take damage. And I really enjoy this. I'm not saying this to convince you that I'm any good at this game. I am pretty bad at this game, and the frustrating aspect is that it is a dungeon based game, so if you die at say level 4 out of 5, you have to start over, and that is very difficult. So you would think I would learn from my mistakes, but right now we've moved on to our second level. This is where things start to ramp up a little bit. I just got my first level up and I have an extra dice, so things are cooking and moving along. I realized that I didn't even mention the fact that you do collect, I guess you call them cards. That's what I think in my mind, where you collect these different battle options throughout the game. And it's really fun to see the different enemies and how their difficulty increases and their different cards that they use. Sometimes it's even great that you have different players and enemies that you go against that have different abilities than you, because there are some mechanics where you can actually take their cards or use that to your advantage and things like that. When it comes to early game for warrior, it's to try to do as much damage as you can per dice. So if I get low numbers, I try to re-roll it for higher numbers. I didn't luck out so much. I got 4s, but I was able to use my Fury attack, so I got to repeat my attack. Perfect. Now we're moving forward. I do want to take some health regain. That's the hard part right now, is that I don't really have a way to regenerate my health besides apples that I find along the way or leveling up. My strat is to try to do as much damage as I can per dice. So if I re-roll, I'm trying to get a 6 here, but I unfortunately didn't get it because I would like to weaken his attacks for future, but it's okay, it works out. Thankfully though, the wizard just has 1 dice per turn. As you can see here, I got my Fury and I have a pretty high dice, so I'm just going to go ahead and do that. Something that I want to point out is I truly love the soundtrack to this game so much. As a composer, I kind of focus on those kinds of things, and I really enjoy the sound design that this game has. I enjoy the sound effects and just the flow of it all. Alright, now I got my second level up and I get to choose a reward here. Now that I mentioned my appreciation for the sound design, I unfortunately am going to go ahead and speed up the gameplay here just so that the video moves along a little bit. I don't want this to take forever since I am trying to continue this first dungeon and there's about 6 levels to this. Alright, so right here is a pretty difficult spot that I'm in. I have a blind dice, so I don't know what number it is. And so now I'm on my last dice, and I'm trying to get an even number so I'm able to do damage. And finally on my last reroll, I was able to get a 4, and that allowed me to surpass this. I also am having my first shop here where I can buy new cards with the gold that I earn. I forget that whenever I defeat enemies, I'm also earning gold. So I'm just trying to re-evaluate my inventory and see what is going to help me in the future, since I have collected a few more cards throughout the game. Something that I really love doing is anytime that I have sixes with a bump card to play, I always put it in there so that I'm able to actually get a second dice. And since the warrior is able to re-roll any dice, I can go ahead and take that one and see about getting a better roll to help me out too. So that's a really fun strat that I like to do, and I try to remember sixes to bump, sixes to bump, sixes to bump. So right here I have the ability to upgrade some of my cards, so I'm trying to remember and reevaluate all my cards that are on me, including my backpack and my inventory, to see where I could get the best use of this upgrade. I think upgrading this from even dice to just any dice is really going to help me in the future. Alright, so I'm kind of proud of this one. I was able to realize that this person only has 2 cards, so if I'm able to affect them in any way of either weakening or shocking one of their cards, that really helps me, so then they're less likely to attack, and I'm running pretty low on health here.
Let's go.
Alright, so right here I was at the mercy of my dice. I was not able to re-roll for any high numbers, but I am able to use my bump here, so it works out pretty well. And I love that I'm able to reuse this shock card too. Alright, I'm pretty happy with that win. I was clutching it at the end, but now I'm able to move on, and I think I finished this level of the dungeon too. So I'm just trying to regain my health with all these apples and finally see if I have enough gold. And I do. Finally, I have a recovery card. Now I'm trying to optimize my inventory with all the new cards that I've collected and trying to move on to the next stage of the dungeon. Honestly, that was incredibly lucky. I had 3 6s right off the bat, but unfortunately I know that I'm gonna have a hard time this level because this character is able to freeze my dice, which basically decreases my highest dice down to 1. However, that doesn't affect my shock card anymore, so I can shock all of his cards and be able to minimize his damage. Okay, so clearly this floor is pretty tough because a lot of the upcoming enemies have the freezing ability, which again makes the highest dice that I roll into a 1. Sometimes it's fine because I can re-roll, but again, this is where I would be at the mercy of a dice roll. I know that there are some different schools of thought when it comes to playing RNG games, meaning whether you like them or not. I feel like this game does kind of a combination of the idea of a skill-based and random-based game, and that's why I think it's so fun. To me, I like to think of this game as a combination of like Yahtzee, Dungeons and Dragons, and maybe even Pokemon. Plus, the more times I die, the more I want to learn for next time, because when it comes to the more difficult characters after the warrior, you definitely have to follow a specific order of operations in order to completely succeed in the game. The added element of chance really makes me want to play more because I feel like it does kind of have a high risk, high reward winning that keeps me engaged. Now I hope at this point of the gameplay you're able to kind of grasp and understand how this game works, so I thought I would share a little bit about myself while the gameplay continues in the background. I do want to apologize for being gone for so long. There were a lot of elements at play that prevented me from being able to consistently upload. The main reason was that I no longer had a desktop computer. The one that I was using to make my videos before basically pooped out on me because it did not have a lot of processing power. And recording and editing videos takes a lot of juice of a computer. So I decided to sell my computer for a measly $250. Financially, at this time last year, it was not feasible for me to buy a new desktop that would have the processing power to make videos because I was in the throes of planning my wedding. Yes, that's right. When I started my YouTube channel, I was just starting my senior year of college and I was engaged to be married to my fiance. The plan was to wait until after graduation to get married, which meant the summertime would be when the bulk of the wedding planning would happen, since we planned on a winter wedding. It was a beautiful wedding, but it was a stressful and costly time, to say the least. So now, 6 months later, after our wedding, my husband and I were able to invest in a computer that can work for both of us. Speaking of using new things, I also am using a different editing software than what I was using previously. It's honestly the most sophisticated and well-versed editing software, and the kicker is that it's completely free. It's called DaVinci Resolve, and I'm just now starting to use it and get used to its controls, but man am I in love with this program. Okay, enough of personal stuff, let's get back to gaming. I gotta say, I'm not feeling too hopeful in my abilities to make it to the boss this episode. I'm really not generating enough health and I'm taking such high levels of damage with this enemy. Basically, my thought process right now is weighing when I should shock or heal. I've recorded this video a while ago before actually getting around to editing it, and now I know that you really need to weigh the priority of each action that will last the whole fight and not just in one turn. Right here, I definitely should have used shock 3 times instead of healing because, again, the charged card is the only way that I can prevent the damage rather than trying to scramble when the damage is nearly killing me. If I can guarantee that she can keep from hitting me next round, then there is no reason to heal, even if, say, I'm only at 2 HP. Something that's even more helpful when it comes to countdown-based enemies, like this one, is definitely keeping their dice low. Basically, there are 3 actions that you can do to an enemy and a few subgroups from that. You can either affect their health, affect their cards, or affect their dice. Lessening their health or damaging is pretty straightforward, but contrary to what you might think, a lot of the times it's not the priority. The priority is to actually affect the enemy's cards. There are 2 ways to do this, with weakening or shocking their cards. Shocks are the most efficient way to battle, and that's why I lean more towards using them because it basically handicaps in 2 ways. It decreases the number of dice that they can use, and it limits their options for attack. And finally, the 2 ways to affect their dice is by freezing or burning. I lean more towards freezing enemies, especially for countdown enemies, because it limits their attacks by keeping their dice low, as well as automatically giving them an odd dice, which can come into play quite often depending on their cards. And with this defeat, I will not be making it to the boss this episode. Not to fret, because I'm back to making videos again. So I would like to call this episode 1 of the Warrior Dice in the series of Dicey Dungeons. I hope you enjoyed this new game on my channel. You can look forward to new episodes coming. Bye!